Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. We're back with an in-game analysis of the Premier League encounter between Lampard's Chelsea and Mourinho's Spurs at Stamford Bridge. Lampard had a chance to prove himself against his old manager, and Chelsea dominated most of the match to come away with a 2-1 win thanks to goals by Giroud, Alonso, and a Rudiger own goal. The XG also indicated Chelsea deserved the win. But what tactics did both managers use? Well, let's take a look. A quick reminder of the formations, as you can see on our video sponsor, OneFootball's app. Both managers lined up with a back three, with Mourinho opting for a 5-3-2, whereas Lampard opted for more of a 3-4-3. If you want to keep up with your favorite team's matches, transfers, and general news, the OneFootball app is the best place to do so, and you can get it through the link in the description below for free. Let's look at what Chelsea aimed to do in possession. Chelsea often looked to play out from the back when in possession deep. Mourinho's side used a mid-block when out of possession initially, meaning Chelsea could often come through the first phase of play relatively unchallenged. Both Alonso and James would position themselves fairly high when the team was on the ball, often being ahead of the midfield. Mourinho, not wanting to be overrun in midfield, often had decided more of a 5-4-1 than a 5-3-2. This allowed his double pivot to stay tighter to Chelsea's midfield maestros when they were building up to prevent forward progression, and they could press these pivots to try and prevent them turning. In fact, on a couple of occasions, they were able to win the ball off of them, and both Moura and Bergwijn would transition into the space left behind by the high fullbacks and try and get the shot off. But Mount and Barkley could be crucial in these phases, with one of them dropping into midfield to create a 3 vs 2, allowing Chelsea to play through the press. Interestingly, Spurs' centre-backs seemed to want to stay touch-tight to their men most of the game, so Vertonghen often followed Mount into these deeper areas. This is what led to the Giroud goal. Spurs' central midfielders pressed Chelsea's high, creating a huge gap between defence and midfield. Mount drops deep into this gap, with Vertonghen tight, and Sanchez has eyes on Barkley, rather than being round on the cover. Giroud makes the run, and eventually the goal is scored. Chelsea looked to take advantage of this man marking in other ways. Tanganga was often wary of the attacking Alonso, staying tight on him. Barkley would move deep to create a gap over here, and Giroud occupied Alderweireld. So, Mount could make a darting run into this area, which Vertonghen couldn't follow, as this would leave a gap for James to potentially exploit. They did make a big chance in this manner. Giroud could also drop deep, opening up space for the runner, so Chelsea generally manipulated the man marking well. But Barkley and Mount had ultimate freedom in their positions, and with James being high and attacking on the right-hand side, they would often drift across to create a wide overload. Barkley's positioning often kept Tanganga occupied, and Chelsea could look to quickly switch the ball to Alonso for him to have a cross. And in fact, this is how Alonso's goal comes about. From the throw, Alderweireld stays touch-tight to Giroud and is dragged out of position, and Mount is 1 vs 1 with Vertonghen. Barkley's positioning drags Tanganga centrally, and the extra pass means that Alonso has an unmarked shot. When behind, Spurs now look to play higher to prevent Chelsea having easy possession. In Giroud, Chelsea had a genuine target man, so Mount pushed high and tight alongside him to look for the layoff to him and then transition Chelsea to attack. Now let's look at how Spurs looked to attack. They did only have 5 shots compared to 17, as they struggled in the absence of Kane and Son. When the Spurs centre-backs had the ball, their wing-backs in Tanganga and Davies weren't particularly attacking. At the same time, Chelsea pressed high and relentlessly in the first half. Barkley usually started high on Sanchez, as they looked to filter the ball to Vertonghen instead. This is because, as we previously discussed in the video linked in the cards now, Mount is a more effective presser, using his cover shadow well to cut off passes into the midfield. So when he got to Vertonghen at high pace, Vertonghen could only go wide or be forced long. And unlike Chelsea, Spurs didn't have a genuine target man, so the Chelsea centre-backs could comfortably win the aerial game. They often struggled to play through the midfield, as Chelsea were sure to use their pressing angles to prevent the ball into the deep pivot of Winks and Ndombele, as Lo Celso tended to be higher. This reduced effectiveness can be shown by the Spurs pivots making less passes than Chelsea's, despite ending with higher possession. Spurs would often try to drop Lo Celso to help with this, but because Chelsea's front three used their cover shad as well, it meant that Chelsea's midfield two could often cover the midfield three. And even when he was dropped, he was still ahead of Chelsea's midfield, rather than penetrating between the lines. Lucas was often frustrated and dropped really deep to help the build-up, which would reduce the attacking threat. When they did get higher up, Lo Celso or Lamela would look to dictate the play between the lines. And with Chelsea's backline deep, often Lucas and Bergwijn wouldn't have the space to run into. Instead, they looked to drop deep, but this meant that when the ball did go wide to their wingbacks, who aren't great offensively, they had no one to pick out with the cross. At times, when Lucas did drop, the defender would follow, leaving space for Bergwijn to exploit, and this did lead to a big chance. But overall, Chelsea showed much more attacking intent, and although Mourinho would point out the offensive injuries as being the primary reason, even before the injury, the offensive struggles were there to see. But what did you make of the match? What could both managers have done differently? If you enjoyed this, you might like the in-depth breakdown of both Mourinho and Lampard's reigns and tactics linked at the end of this video. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.